So thanks for coming today. We really appreciate it. And feel free to just help yourself with stuff as we go. But Firestarters has evolved, pivoted, done all sorts of things over the years. It started kind of like where we are right now, is showcasing women-owned businesses and just trying to get people to know about them. And because I love them, I want everybody else to love what I love. and so I did a lot of jumping around to businesses before I had this space, and then had done some different workshops with it, and then COVID hit and didn't get to do a whole lot of anything. So I'm really excited to kind of start bringing this back up again and getting people here. So I am super excited to have Shelley Hickman here today to kind of talk about the stuff that she does, and hopefully we can get some real good life hacks out of her, right?
Yeah,
right.
And we do have a group virtually as well. So if you all see me look over here, I'm gonna make sure I'm talking to the crew online, everyone.
Hi. So yeah, look at camera one.
Where are you,
Camera two. Yeah.
No, I'm excited to be here.
Yeah. So
You want me to just do a little introduction?
yeah.
And then you're gonna give me questions and
Yeah,
stuff
we'll
like
just
that?
kind of throw some stuff out. It works really organically, and if you guys have questions along the way, really don't hesitate to ask. This is not super formal, there's no podium to come up to. So tell us about yourself.
So I'm Shelley. I was born and raised in Ohio. I just need to say that to give a good shout out to the state guys. Yeah. I live in Racine now. I have been in Wisconsin for 18 years, I think. So we're getting closer to that longer here than Ohio, but Ohio will always be home. And I own a state farm agency. I've been a state farm agent since April 1st of 2016. Prior to that, I was in a corporate role in some way, either through product management, marketing communications, and manufacturing leadership. I just decided that wasn't my path. And so here I am. I wanted to get into a role that was a business I could own with some safety nets. I know I'm a dreamer, so I tend to be like, oh, I want to try this. Well, that's boring now. So now I want to try this, and that's not like that anymore. And then I would try this. So State Farm gave me that brand protection and the process protection and the freedom to be my own boss. And so to be able to be engaged in the community is really my work. And State Farm allows me to do that.
Yeah.
The business structure does.
Yeah. It's kind of like an intrapreneurship.
Yes.
Which I think is really cool. I don't know if anybody's heard of that before. Like entrepreneurship is like you're just out on your own, do your own business. And intra one is that you can be very entrepreneurial within a corporate setting, and it's you don't see it a whole lot, but it's really cool when you do have it because it has the best of both worlds: safety net, with some freedom.
Yeah, and a lot of people think that State Farm agents are one and the same. We're all, it's called captured agents, where we can only sell State Farm products. Versus a broker that can sell multiple. I have my own LLC. I hire and fire my own employees. Very rarely fire them. But that's all on me. So I take on the risk and I sell the product. But if I do something that isn't kosher with State Farm regulation or insurance industry regulation, they terminate. It's kind of like a teaching tenure, right? So professor wants to get tenure, so they always have security at the university. As a State Farm agent, you do an internship where you're temporary, and if you pass all of the evaluations, then you get contracted. So it's my business. So it is like that where I don't know Jake, I don't know Aaron Rodgers.
It's like that's what you're talking about. Oh,
Yeah.
State Farm,
Right.
So you don't know what he's wearing. Yeah.
Probably khakis and a red polo shirt, I would assume.
And then how did you jump into insurance? Because it's not like, hey, I want to grow up and sell insurance.
Yeah.
My parents were insurance agents,
Yes.
so, and,
Yeah.
it's always, I find it just interesting that other people jump into that.
So I have found if you wanna shut down conversation with anyone, talk about insurance. Or introduce yourself as an insurance agent. It's like, oh, I'm a State Farm agent. It took me about 6 months to realize I own a State Farm agency.
Yeah,
And it's that simple shift of, if people are like, I'm gonna go get it, my
Right.
drink, it's been great meeting you. And as an extrovert who had a really strong network, to have that cold shoulder, to answer your question though, in my corporate role, I was in heavy manufacturing. I did product management, had some phenomenal management leadership training. The company I worked for was bought by Caterpillar. I had spent some time in the plant. I was the director of communications for Firestarters, and then we were bought by Caterpillar. And Caterpillar's a beast. I would just say that it's a huge organization, and the number one priority from my experience was shareholder value. And so at the time of acquisition, I went back into manufacturing, and it's one of those situations where they're like, you know it, you know what you're doing. My dad was a tool and die maker, so I grew up with shavings in the carpet, and the smell of oil from a machine shop is very nostalgic for me. And women aren't in that, so like, shoot you right up through the rank and file and CAT, like this is your ticket. So I had the opportunity to run the plant, which was pretty phenomenal. I hated it. What I hated about it was the lack of human engagement. So I knew all of my employees. I had spent 4 years out in the plant with they were my family. And I was reporting to a traditional Caterpillar leader. And the first round of budgets, I think my budget, I had about a $2.5 million budget for my plant. And they're like, you need to cut, the acquisition was bad. You need to cut money from your budget. So I worked with my finance person and came up with, I think it was $250,000 I had to cut out of it. Wow. Brought it to the table. He took that money, allocated it to one of the traditional Caterpillar plants, and then told me I had to come up with another $250,000. And he was like, and the only way you're gonna do that is to take people out, so how many people are you taking out? And like, I just don't work that way. I believe in human capital, and when people come up with ideas to save, I feel like those savings are sustainable.
Yeah.
And these are people's lives that you're dealing with, and the previous leader I had worked for pre-acquisition was a philanthropist through and through. He was forceful about it. His executive team all had to give at least $10,000 just to United Way in Milwaukee. So he didn't mess around. He was served on boards, he led by example. And I loved that. I loved that we were in the community, we were doing volunteer days of service. And so post-acquisition, I could never figure out what we worked for. Like, what's my mission with Caterpillar other than shareholder value? Like, I'm a shareholder, of course I want the company to perform. But why? Like, what are we doing for the planet? What are we doing for the world? What are we doing for the communities that we serve? And so my best friend has been with State Farm for 12 years, my college roommate. And we would have these conversations. And I was like, I don't know why I go to work every day. I don't know what that is. And she's like, oh my gosh, this is what we do at State Farm. We help prepare people for the unexpected. We help them recover from that. We serve our communities. Like, bam. She's like, you should look at agency. And I was like, no. I do not want to be an insurance agent. And she's like, Shelley, it's more than that. And so I started going through all of the evaluations, and it was a pretty lengthy process to see whether or not you have the makeup to be a good agent. And then there was an agent retiring on the north side of Racine, and before I know it, I'm accepting the position of state fireman. And I'm 5 years in, and just getting to the point where I can find that balance. Most of the income probably goes back to the community. And I love that. That's part of my personal mission is to it's to unlock those change makers who want to and believe in social progress, want to build resilient communities, and just be better people. And so it was hard though. Like I woke up Saturday morning, I resigned, my last day was a Friday, I just kind of snuck out of the plant. Woke up Saturday morning to zero email, like they shut me off the day I left. And talk about grief. Like, there's so much of my personal identity that was tied to that job, that status, that community. And my first State Farm event where I didn't know anyone, I was nauseous. Like I was just like, usually I was the one who was like, hey Mom, how are you? And it's like, hi, I'm Shelley. I'm from Wisconsin, and they're like, how'd you get here? Like, I don't know. Yeah, so hopefully that answers the question. Really a long way.
So you just ease right into it.
Yeah.
But I think, you have also taken it and made it much more than just an insurance agency. There's people who just come in and sell and that's kind of it, but you really do insert yourself into communities and support multiple groups. So what are some of the groups that you work with in the community?
So I have two boards that I chair. One locally is Believe Survivors, which is formerly known as, it's still known as Sexual Assault Services Overseeing. That's the largest program under our umbrella. And Karen's on. Hi, Karen. Karen's our executive director. She's amazing, and the whole crew is amazing there. And so SAS was under Lutheran Social Services. They reorged and decided that wasn't a good fit, as well as Stop Child Abuse and Neglect, which is called SCAN. And so Focus on Community was the fiscal sponsor of those two programs until we decided where to go. And so Karen and Sam, her cohort, partner, I was probably right with that, had this vision to create an umbrella nonprofit that these two programs can follow, and eventually we can expand into other programs as well. And so they had actually reached out to Barb, my partner Barb, to ask if she would like to serve on the board, and she was full up. And so I'm like, I would love to reach out. So Karen and I connected, and we launched July 1. We've had a reserve fund campaign that we hit our goal for so far, which, we have a big event on Saturday, Small Plates, Big Hearts. So that's the last revenue generator for the reserve fund campaign. So it's been really awesome. We have a great board. I also volunteer a lot with the LGBT Center of Southeast Wisconsin. I served on that board until Barb and I are in a relationship, so that's a conflict of interest. And so I think I do more work now, which is really cool. There's a lot. The community here is just amazing and untapped, and so there's just I'm excited for the restrictions to lift so we can do more and more together. And then I also chair the LGBT Center, LGBTQ+ Center Lake County, which Nikki Michelle, who is one of Esther's best friends, she and her family relocated to Waukegan, seeking resources for herself and the kids, realized there weren't any in Lake County, Illinois. And so she said, I'm gonna launch a center. And I was like, I would love to chair that. And my purpose for people like, why do you want to do this? Because I chair the board for Believe as well. My vision is to create infrastructure and process and stability and culture in those organizations that are going to drive sustainability. So how do we recruit board members who want to work, not work for a living, but who want to work, who understand philanthropy, who believe in our mission, which is number one, and just this culture of giving. And not just showing up to vote once a month.
Right.
And so it's right now we've got a lot of activities on both boards I serve on. At the same time, there's so much overlap that it's really kind of beautiful. So it's just really fun, very rewarding.
It's great, and we've talked before. You are, in your nature a builder. Like you like problem solving, design thinking, creating things, which is really fun. Because I feel like I'm that way too. So it's like finding ways to make things work, because working with boards, I think, can be really challenging. I mean, there are quite a few people on multiple boards, but the question becomes like, how involved are they? Because it makes it hard. We have a lot of nonprofits in our area, and I think some of them really struggle because they may not have all the support they need, or people who are really driving some of that. So I think,
Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, I think it's great, the things that you've chosen and how you are pushing forward with them is really exciting.
Yeah, it's been interesting through COVID, especially with Believe. Quite a few of our board members have been connected with SAS for a long time, or in some way through that network. And so it was a new community for me, new people, hard to get to know people through Zoom, and to see people kind of blossom into their strength, and then go to them for that. And it's been great because Karen has been involved with that board. She knows all the board members, and but just a lot of times where it's just like, oh, we're not getting what we need. That is my trigger to look in the mirror. So what, as a leader, do I need to be doing to either lead by example or motivate change in thought? So just even learning, having that communication with, do people have the time? Is something going on that we need to compensate for them while they recover? But it's really cool when you see the organization come together and meet your goals, support the organization, and not bicker, not get into the nooks and crannies of wording and contracts. I mean, you want that, and you need people specialized who do that, and then you trust that person and to come back to your organization and say, yeah, this is legit. And I will tell you, Karen introduced me to our bylaw process at BB. Is every board member has to sign the bylaws, board chair signs bylaws, and ED signs bylaws. And that's been amazing. Because people are like, hey, this is a contract, I'm signing up. And if you can't meet it, it's easy to say, I'm not able to do this. And so
I think that's important, because I think without some of that clarity, that's where some organizations tend to flounder. They don't have clear roles and responsibilities, or they think they do, but then maybe there's that accountability factor. Sometimes it's really hard to hold people accountable, but if you have things like this kind of signed contracts and commitments, it puts it on the table. You talked about, playing to people's strengths, right? And that's always, I think, a challenge for some people in leadership roles is finding it. So what are some of your techniques that you use to kind of really learn what people's strengths are? Because people they don't always, or toot their own horn like, oh, I can do this, or even better, some people don't even realize that they have certain strengths until someone else is like reflecting it to them. So, what's your magic potion for figuring that out?
It seems really simple, but the first thing is just asking, how do you see yourself bringing value to this organization? Because people believe they have something to give or they wouldn't serve, whether it's in a professional role or board role or community volunteer role. And if they know where they can add value and you can channel things of that nature to them, then it's just a good fit, it's organic. And then just checking in with people. Like, you can tell if you've given someone something. There's 4 different stages of development, and it's a Ken Blanchard model. And it's like S1, S2, S3, S4, D1. And one is where the employee is, and one is your management style to that, or your leadership style to that. So if you think about when seatbelt laws, I think we're all old enough you always had to wear a seatbelt, Allison?
Yes.
Okay, so bear with me here.
We're going on the way back machine for a second.
So some of us had to get used to this law, that click it or a ticket, right? So how many of you think about putting your seatbelt on in the morning? Just do it, right?
Yeah.
How many of you think about how you get to work? You just do it because you've mastered that process, and you don't. When the seatbelt law first went into place, I mean, shoot, there are reminders on your car if you drive 3 miles without, or
Yeah, it
3
just
or
keeps
2.
beeping
Yeah.
incessantly.
So when someone comes in new to an organization, so even if I went to work for American Family, which I have no plans to, I would revert back to stage 1 in my understanding, because the products are different, the process is different, the systems are different. So I need a lot more direction, specific direction from my leader. And then once I've mastered that task, you move into level 2. If you think about like a bell curve, so stage 2 is like you consciously, so the first time is like, the first stage is unconscious, unconscious, what is that? You don't know that you don't know.
Right.
So you're raring to go, right? You're like, I can rock this. And stage 2 is, holy crap, I don't know anything. So you're self-conscious, you're like, yourself,
Yeah, the doubt, like the imposter, like,
yeah,
Confidence.
Self-confidence,
Yeah.
like, conscious is not right, self-confidence is low.
Kind of like the imposter.
Yes.
Feeling it.
You feel like you're not contributing. And so as a leader, you have to not give someone everything in level 2, because they get defeated. And so you say, okay, let's start with 1 and let's work you through, and the next stage is you know, you don't know. You know, and you wait.
it's kind of like an acceptance of like, okay, I really have no clue.
You know you don't know.
Yeah, I really have no clue.
It's like, you know you don't know, and then you know. But you still have to follow a process. You're like, okay, I got this. So as a leader or in any capacity, you have to back up and let people just run. And then stage 4, level 4 is like you're over the hump. And you don't even have to think about it. You know what you don't know.
Yeah.
Like, it's just like, I just go through it, right? I can quote someone like that without even thinking about it. I just know where to go to do that, I know the process. And so often in any capacity, we teeter between 2 and 3 as contributors. And then as leaders, we see someone say, oh, well, they know how to do this. So I'm out. I'm gonna go to the next thing. And then you add another piece to that person's plate. And then they slip back into that 2 box, in that 2 quadrant, and then the discouragement comes into play, you know? So for me, it's like paying attention to where people are. It's simple things like, are they showing up to work on time? Are they engaged, or is their spirit happy?
Right.
Are they grumpy? If they're grumpy and it's affecting other people, then let's deal with that. But if they're grumpy because they don't feel like they're doing well, I think inherently most people want to do well.
Yeah.
And so as a leader, it's being in tune with that. I mean, like, oh, someone seems off today, what's going on?
So that's really interesting. So on some of the boards that you either are currently on or have worked on, like how many people are you leading at any given time?
So,
Because you have you're also doing your book club, which has a pretty robust membership.
that's the toughest one to manage. So, the Belief Board, I believe we have 11 active board members. I think it's 11, the last time I counted. And then on the Center Lake County, we have 8 currently, with 1 opening. And that's been a really fun process because we created this, I've said that this is the best of the best. This is the board we want people to serve on. So we have a queue of board members. But we don't want it so big that we're doing consensus paralysis. So we have 9 spots right now. The executive committee was like, or the founding committee was like, 5 would be great. And we're all like, no, that's too much.
That's-
for now.
Yeah, no.
5 total. They're
Yeah,
like,
that's a lot of work for
Yeah.
5 Fridays.
They're 8, 9 spots.
Yeah, so you think about it, I mean, you're leading, now are you also, do you consider yourself a mentor to people? Because that's a little bit different relationship versus, someone leading, it's a little more global with some, one-on-one, but like if you're really actively mentoring somebody, that's a commitment. That's like a real relationship commitment for growth. So do you find that you are mentoring a lot of these people as well, or is that even needed with the level that some of the people are coming in on your boards?
So I don't have any formal mentoring relationships, and a lot of really everyone who's serving on either board that I'm on, they're good.
Yeah, that's great.
And I find that the mentoring happens more situational. Like I myself constantly am seeking mentorship and development. I have a communication coach, Denise Thomas, is amazing. So good. I also have a therapist. Highly recommend therapy. And so I'm always looking for growth opportunities and feedback, which is why I hang with you, because you shoot straight with me, and when I'm whiny, you tell me to pull it together, and when I'm out of line, you tell me to pull it together, when I'm doing things well, you're like, you're doing well, so.
She's really good at that.
I know, like I learned a long time ago, you're as good as the 5 people you spend most of your time with, and so I
One of my favorite quotes.
really try to be picky about who gets that space. And then if there's a mentoring opportunity, that's probably one of my favorite things to do. Like if I observe a situation that just give me a night, please. It's like, walk me through how you handled that. Like just let's role play that a little bit, because it sounded abrasive, or what if you ask this question, or you're about to make a difficult phone call, how can you set it up so the individual on the other side is open? Or someone calls in, you want to get people upset, talk about money.
Yeah.
Tell people their bill's late. Tell people their
Rate
premium
just
went
went
up.
up $4.
And so a lot of times we're that first line.
Yeah.
And so one of the things is Barb was asking me, how do you have this intuition? Like and we were talking intuition yesterday, like where does that come from, this, hey, this person, it has this going on, let's do this. Or my mom grew up in Mesa, Arizona, and went to 1 year of college at the U of A in Tucson, met my dad, heartbreaker, got married, and he moved them, and I say he, because his family was in Ohio, 2,000 miles away. So she was 19, brand new family, brand new community. My dad, my grandfather, was a work chaser. And so he went wherever the work was. So my dad attended 13 different schools in 12 years.
Oh my gosh.
So when they landed where I grew up, Dad was like, we didn't even, my mom is still in the house they bought for $7 grand.
Wow.
Still in it, which is amazing. I'm like, hey, where's that?
Yeah.
And
Seriously.
never moved, but what was awesome is that my brother, he's retired from the Air Force, he's in Florida. We're both extremely independent and very open, welcoming people. Like, everyone is welcome at our table. And I think that differences that are celebrated comes from, my dad said to me once, just as soon as I caught on to a trend like fashion, like think about that in high school. In his day, white t-shirts, jeans, do you roll your cup or not? How do you wear your hair? Is it a bouffant? Like what is it, a pompadour? Like is that here? Is that cool here? Like they went from Arizona to Long Beach, California, back to Ohio, like major trend differences. And he was like, as soon as I would catch on at a school, we moved. And then you don't fit in anymore, right? So there's always just been this, everyone is welcome. My dad would always say too, like he called me Wonder Woman, which if you ever see Wonder Woman in any of my things, that comes from my dad. It's like you can do whatever you want to do. There's no limit, and always, like, again, Encyclopedia Britannica, maybe some of us here.
I know what it is, I promise.
Okay.
We had, I have two older sisters, so
Okay,
even though I was born like right at the end of the 80s, I caught on to all
okay,
the
okay.
influences,
Like I'd
yes.
be like, hey Dad, what do you think about, and you'd be like, go get it, like go get the encyclopedia, let's look it up together, so we just kind of created this culture of learning. And my mom, both of my maternal grandmothers, I only have one maternal grandmother, just so you know. Both of my grandmothers worked outside their home. My grandma Hickman raised 7 kids, then went back to school and got a teaching degree and taught 3rd grade for 15 years.
Wow.
And then my mom's mom worked for Motorola. Like think about that, my mom was born in 47.
Yeah.
So, and then my mom stayed home until I went to school, and then I think I did her in. I'm the youngest of 3.
Yeah.
She's like, as soon as you're, like, she had me in
I'm
test
out.
early. I started kindergarten at 4. She's like, I need out of this. Yeah. So she led a great career for nationwide insurance.
Yeah.
But yeah, like I've always had these awesome women too, who they just, it's like, and they did all of the domestic duties, right? Like worked
Did
different
everything.
jobs, fed the kids, did the laundry, cleaned the house. And my grandma would go to take a nap and no one, my mom would just be like, you do not wake my dad up and just go wake up. Oh. Okay.
So yeah, so you had like a lot of strong female role models, you know, that I think probably developed a lot of your strength.
Yeah, and just like the teaching and that learning and mentoring and just always looking for guidance. Probably approval too. You know, as the youngest child, you observe a lot. Are you like that, Allison?
Yeah.
Are you? I'm the oldest. That's right. Your brother's younger than you. Where are you, Esther?
Middle.
Middle. I forgot.
You don't understand, yeah.
Jan
So we
Brady.
kind of have a standard for you, but not as much as the other two. Yeah.
Also, thank you for noticing my announcement.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Still
the youngest you
trying to
really, yeah, you pick up on
Yeah.
everything else, okay, so I know just how far
Yes.
I can push it without, yeah.
You were talking about what triggered this whole ramble was the accountability piece, and that's like my mom especially, very. Most of you have met my mom through some Zoom group in the center. On top of it, like she created this chore chart on poster board that hung in the stairwell of the basement. And day of the week, Greg, Kevin, Shelley. So I think Mondays I did dishes, Tuesdays I vacuumed, like took the trash. Like you had responsibilities, and we didn't get allowances. You had to go to school and get good grades. That's your job. My mom was the mom that went to parent-teacher conferences, even though we were all getting really good grades. She was like, "No, I need to know how you're doing." And she had this rule too that we could sign up and participate in anything we wanted to, but we weren't allowed to quit mid-season.
Yeah.
So there was only one thing I quit mid-season, and that was track in junior high. I didn't tell her I quit till after. But yeah, like this follow
You
through.
just spending time
Yeah,
out
did
of the
you not
house
go to
with
practice?
practice.
Day.
Oh.
Same day. No, it wasn't like after season. No,
Oh.
I had really bad cramps, y'all, and I couldn't. I'm like, I can't. I just suffered from that. Like I'm just like I can't run. Like, and so my coach belittled me in front of the entire team.
Oh.
And so I was like, look, I don't want to run track anymore. I'm out. And then I told my mom she's great, but my parents are both like that. Like you signed up, follow through. You don't have to sign up next time, but that's what commitment is. And so I don't know, it's just like all of those things and how the house was, and they knew what was going on. I don't know how. Always. Always.
I know, they didn't even have like the tech to spy on
No,
kids.
you know what they had? Communication with other parents and teachers.
Yeah, it
There was
was.
always the other parents and teachers
A network,
raising the children.
yes.
Shelley, or Terry, your daughter's down here being mischievous. Okay, I'll be, just, no, it wasn't even that. It was like, I had one of my best friend's mom use the fly swatter on your legs. Not encouraging that, just what, back in the day.
Right.
I had a swatter, but she was being mouthy. Okay, like, no, what?
And that was very common, you know, like you punished
What was
other
it,
people's kids if they were
The wooden
misbehaving.
spoon or the
Yeah,
belt or?
mom had a lip brush that had a shoehorn on the end of it, and she'd make you go get it.
Mhm.
Go get the brush. Go get it. Like, it's funny. And she wasn't even mean with it. It was
I don't
just,
even believe you, your mom is so nice. I
She
think you're
is.
making all this up.
No, but she, like, those, like, there
Yeah.
are consequences, right? Like,
Right.
and dad would be like, well, that was funny. Like, if I would be mouthy. Mom said you misbehaved today. Don't do it anymore. Like, you mean, yeah, she ran that.
So yes, that, you know, I think that kind of conflict resolution and accountability and all that stuff really it shows through in all the stuff that you do, you know, and I think it's good because I think you do hold people to, you know, a higher standard, and not that it's a standard that they can't achieve. Like, I think you've seen people where they can be and give them the space to get there, but also kind of show them, hey, you can do this. This is hard. You're gonna probably have to work through some stuff to get, you know, it's not gonna be easy or pretty, but you can do it, and then you're there. You know, you're there as that lifeline to get them to that next phase, which I think is a real key point in leadership. There's a lot of people who fancy themselves as leaders, but it's a lot of times in name only. We're not seeing in action. So, you know, you talked about working with Denise as a communication coach. Who have been some influential people aside from family, you know, past family, that have really gotten you some of your key leadership skills?
I've had some amazing bosses who just would let me run. Like, I love to go do, I love to create, it's rewarding. I love to build process. I love, probably most, and I'll answer your question. The thing I love doing most is driving change, and not for the sake of it. Within cultures where people just don't really understand why it's important or how things, it's that what's in it for me radio station that we all check into, WIIFM, what's in it for me is everyone's favorite radio station. But when people don't know what their role is or why it's important, or maybe it's just not even, but if it is, like, how do we help tell the story in so many different ways and be flexible in our communication styles that we can reach the buttons in people that drive action. And so, one of my bosses, his name is Rod Goldhouse. His wife is now one of the top CEOs in the country for the plastics business. So he actually retired and is her personal assistant as a noble. He has 2 daughters. His one daughter, Megan, is an attorney for an insurance company. They live in Manhattan, near the Statue of Liberty. I have to do all of it. And his other daughter is married to one of the Aaron's children. Aaron's makes the orange lawnmowers, and they're currently in England, I think. So he has always been a huge fan of women in powerful roles, and that helps as a woman who has career potential. And so one time when we talk about experiences, things that sit with you, this is a story I will never forget. I was leading the implementation of lean manufacturing, and if you want to scare the crap out of factory workers, talk about lean manufacturing in the US. Instantly job elimination. And so Rod had just joined Bucyrus and said, hey, I need someone to lead this region. I'm like, I don't know anything about it. He's like, I'll send you to school. I'm like, just do this. And so, and I had gone to him asking for his executive support for a different project I was running for communications. He was like, no, I need you to do this. And so he saw my potential, right? He sent me to training, and then I had 6 unions, so we were at a union facility, 6 union team members who then reported to me. And combined, they had over 100 years of service at the organization. And here I am, this little whippersnapper, and all of these guys, it was the best first leadership role I could have ever had. I put them through the ringer, like, we're developing our vision. And they'd be like, okay, really? Yep, we're doing it. And then we're gonna develop our core values for our organization. And one of them was honesty. And so I'd be like, Esther, how do you define honesty? Allison, how do you define honesty? They're like, you're really making us do this? I'm like, yeah, because we all have a different definition. And by the time we ironed that out, we were hiring another spot, and we used our values and our mission to remove potential candidates that didn't fit what we had defined as our core. It's beautiful. So we did these projects on the factory floor, and then they were called, they're 5S events where we clean out the workspace. And then there would be a report out where the COO was invited and other department heads were invited. So we had one of those going on at noon, and I had another 5S event happening in a different part of the factory all morning. And so I'm painting posts and cleaning, and I show up at 5 till 12 for the report out. And Rod was livid. He's like, where have you been? I'm like, I'm running this event. He was like, no. Like, this is a report out to the executives. Like, this is your job to make sure this goes well. And so after the event, the report out, I was in my cubicle, and he sits down on that little filing cabinet / second chair that you have in cubicles in the corporate world. And I choose to say, scolded me. Like, you need to understand that these executives are sponsoring this program, and if things aren't set up well, if the technology doesn't work, if your presenters aren't there, it can impact, like, to the point where I was bawling. And he couldn't see me because I'm looking at my computer. And I was like, I hear you. Like, I was like, I hear you, like that. And he was like, oh my God, like what? I'm like, I hear you, I understand. But his whole message was, you have to be in touch from start to finish in your brand, in your personal brand, in your values, and how you communicate those to people who aren't still on board with the change we're deploying. And so I'm like, just don't, like, I hear you. And his opinion of me was so important that I had disappointed him, right? Like, here's this guy who's invested in me, and I let him down. Yet he could have just blown that off and not provided me any feedback, right? So leaders are visionaries. You're setting the pace. You're providing that motivation to achieve the end result. Managers are in the task. And so he was grooming me to lead. Like, you have people who are doing the task.
Right. You don't need to be on
You've
there
got to
painting
keep,
poles.
yes. And I was like, but when people see me painting, then they want to paint too, and then that's fun. And yes, but know where your place is. And so he was one of my, I've had just some phenomenal bosses like that who just gave me the reins and then provided that candid feedback that was relatable, that I could action. And Rod has been one of them. Like, I also, and I shared this, I think it was in book club, after we had been bought by Caterpillar, I was in a quality role. And the executive, we had hired this, the vice president of operations from GM, and her name is Denise as well. It's good to keep all the Denises in check. And how amazing to have a woman in a manufacturing role.
Yeah.
I was like, and I was asked to present when she came to our plant. Rod's like, I want you to present. And so the other thing Rod let me do was challenge him. And have learned how to challenge my leaders gracefully and with credibility, right? So Rod is correct, we're also doing this, right? So they're going on a factory tour, and I was like, wait for me guys, I gotta pee. You know, like I just have to hit the washroom. And so I go in the washroom, there's 2 stalls. And I'm like, oh, that's weird. Like there's usually in manufacturing never any women unless you're in the offices, is usually what happens. So I come out of the stall and there's Denise washing her hands. I was having that moment that guys have all the time when they get to mingle and not mingle, but like
Right, just have these
exchanges or whatever.
offside conversations
Yeah.
in places that you don't have permission to be in.
Yeah. And she was like, you and I need to talk. I want to know what your career aspirations are. And so like just really those serendipitous moments of paths crossing and having enough wherewithal to not get myself in too much trouble with my humor. Because it can get me in trouble sometimes, but yeah. So Denise is another one of those. My own boss, when I resigned from CAT, was in another country and called and just said his only question to me was it something I did? And Denise personally texted me and said, please tell me this isn't true. Like that those relationships fuel me hardcore in my career.
Yeah, it's important because I love what you're talking about. It is if you're going to be in any kind of leadership role, that continued growth. Because how can you keep growing other people if you yourself are not growing? Because eventually if you stop, they're gonna meet you, and then
That's a good donut.
there are donuts. This is Joy, our accountant.
Hi, Joy. Your accountant. Yeah.
Yeah, have some donuts. You can have a seat if you want. Let's see where we at on time. So we got about like 10 minutes. Does anyone have questions for Shelley?
What has been, your favorite job or role that you've had throughout?
So the question is, what has been my favorite job or role that I've had throughout my career? When I was the director of communications for Firestarters, and what was awesome about that role, so I have my undergrad is in chemistry, so I was going to teach, should not have been, and then I went back and got my master's in marketing and communications, and that's really my sweet spot. And so I was given the opportunity to go into that role with because the CEO of Firestarters was like, hey, I think you can be good at this. So I had there were a team of 4 of us, so I had 3 people who worked for me, and we did investor relations, public relations, community relations, employee communications, like we kicked butt. We had acquired 2 other companies, so we were integrating those organizations into our culture not so well. And I had the opportunity, it was when sustainability really started to be questioned, especially, don't hate me, the company I work for is a mining company. So we built manufacturing equipment to destroy the earth. So we can all have these wonderful devices and cars and all of that stuff. So the executives were like, we have to do sustainable, like, what are we doing? And I was like, I want that. And so I got to travel all over the world and meet with we were international. So I went to Johannesburg, South Africa. I was in Germany a lot, we had plants in Germany, just made that pronunciation up. I went to Australia, I traveled to Brazil. I just like these experiences selfishly to see culture and experience culture and also learn from the employees, like what's it like to be in a satellite office? How are we doing from a corporate perspective? And then to feel like you're developing something that matters, and you start to see how are we doing with the environment? What is the this industry. It was probably my trip to Brazil that really, from a mining perspective, it was the first time I had gone to a mine site and been nauseous. It was really bad. So it was that ability to travel with the CEO and help with PR and interviews. And I mean, he was interviewed for CNN, MSNBC. I can't remember some of those. It was just really cool experience. And then to know that I got to message with my people locally in the plant. And that's the other thing with the CEO is he was a huge collaborator with the union. To the point where both the company logo and the union logo were on their uniforms. Like it was very family friendly until. And then the company logo came off. Or no, actually the union logo came off. But so yeah, it was a really, really awesome role. That was fun. That was my sweet spot for sure.
Nice. I'm gonna just run over and see if any of the Zoom people have questions. You can type in the chat room. Joy's like, what? There's Zoom too?
I just went to my office and saw a message.
I know, I'm like, she just saw donuts and then.
I don't know, but there's donuts.
Okay. So Karen, one of the things she had said that they're very lucky to have Shelley on our belief board, which, yay. That's, really, it's great. It's a great feeling when you are passionate about something and then, it's recognized. Like, you people, like what you're doing, connect with you and, kind of give you a little bit of freedom to really use your skills in the ones around you. I think that was one of the, this woman that used to have partnerships with in Illinois. She ran a massage business out of her. She had a beautiful home and then they did an addition and had like this massage businesses that add on. And her thing was always, she didn't hire people and tell them they had to do this. When she interviewed them, she found out what it is they love to do, and then she built that space for them, and then let the clients, they sought the clients that would fit what she was building, instead of trying to cram people into roles that weren't them or their nature.
I love that. I was hoping to do that.
Yeah.
It's a shift in mindset, and I think that's where people struggle hiring sometimes too, because in your mind you have this role, you need this thing filled, but it may not be exactly what we fill, whether it's on a board or as an employee, but as you're interviewing people and finding out what their strengths are, I'm like, oh, they've got these strengths, I think I can work with that, and then skill sets can be trained.
Yeah. And I would say that's my greatest challenge as a boss is
See, now you can see her full on style,
Yeah.
right now she's warmed up a little bit.
is I'm not I'm extremely competitive. Okay, so I've been in sports since I was 5 and
Should see her playing bags.
we're gonna change our
different
runway.
person.
Right, so for bags, the
That's
teachers are
great
gonna say,
stories.
at least love wins,
Yeah.
even though we don't. It's gonna be the winning shirt, but we give it a good shot.
I'll tell Joy things.
Yeah. So,
She gets a little heated.
yeah, but I like to sell, and so I really enjoy closing the deal, but I'm not a real big prospector. Like I like to prospect for a relationship, like, hey,
Yeah.
hey, you're buying a new car, I'd love to quote your insurance, like that'd be great. And so what's really important for sales is to have somebody who likes to cold call and
Yeah.
prospect and gets motivated and incentivized on those quality outreaches. And because I don't really like that, I struggle to recruit that and then train it.
Yeah.
Because I also don't want the smarmy salesperson, right? That turns people off. And so, that's hard. And then I'm the kind of person where I'm like, I like you. Come work for me, you're fun. And really doesn't result in productivity. We just have fun and, we
Then
don't.
you're just like, oh, this isn't getting done and dang it.
Yeah.
Yeah, so those things are really, I think, challenging. Anybody else? Any questions? George, like,
I only know what happened in the last 10 minutes.
I know she's like, well, I recorded it, so I'm gonna be posting it up on YouTube as soon as I get better at converting the videos for YouTube.
Well, recap, Shelley is amazing, and
Yeah.
has a lot of life experience.
I was gonna share, so I know I've met Heather's daughter, Alex, who is 19. And has now been in retail, clothing retail for 3 years. 3 years. And so when you're asking me about like mentoring, and you hear her talk about, she works at Maurice's, so if anybody wants a really good personal shopper, go to Maurice's and ask for Alex.
Love Maurice's.
They actually have really good customer service there.
They do.
Yeah.
They do.
They're
The
like-
way
They make
that
you
they,
feel so special.
yeah, the
Well,
way
and
they
she
model
has
stuff.
a great manager, boss, leader,
Yes.
mentor.
Yes.
So, yes, that's been running through my head this whole time as you were talking about that.
Yeah, it's
You know?
game changing. Like to
Yeah.
hear Alex talk about even career potential
Mhm.
based off of the mentorship and leadership she's had from her store manager. It's like when you like I struggle with millennials a little bit. And then to hear Alex talk when she talks about work. I mean you put
She's
20 years on
very-
her.
Yeah. She is very passionate about it.
Yeah.
Very passionate.
And that's awesome.
But
Yes.
you don't really find that in retail a lot.
Well, you don't find that with 19-year-olds.
Also
Yeah.
that,
Right,
you
right.
know, very
To
true.
be that
So-
excited,
Yes, yes.
so like kind of a plan, and even if that plan doesn't
Yeah.
materialize, just to kind of have that mindset to go after it
Yes.
is amazing.
And like Heather in her rearing of Alex, it's like Alex was doing this interim management role because of some pay reduction before people quit, I think, someone
Yes.
quit. And Alex was like, do I get more money for this? And the leader was like, no, like you don't have this title, you're doing this. And Alex was like, okay, that makes sense. Like it wasn't like this entitlement. One, she had the courage to ask, and two, she could handle that. I've gotta pay my dues.
Yeah.
You know? And then she proved herself. And so then it's really, really neat. And that's the kind of game changing interactions you can have with people. You know? Like,
Yeah.
it's really cool to hear her.
I think it's
Kudos to
really-
you, like that's parenting in my mind. It's like
I
you
did
know,
push
she's
her
like,
to ask about the pay raise because she was really nervous about it.
Yeah.
So we did some, not role playing, but we talked it through about, what are you nervous about and, how to approach it in a way that wasn't entitlement.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, and it's the same thing with Yoshi. It's just like I'm grateful. I think every family has dysfunction. Just like it's kind in my mind, it's like gender. It's on this sliding scale, right? Like today I feel more male, and yesterday I felt more female, and family has dysfunction. Like today we're like rocking it, and yesterday not so much. But I'm grateful. Like I had some awesome parents. I had an awesome upbringing, and I just want to be able to get that back, even though I don't have kids. I want to do that in other ways.
Yeah. That's awesome. Yay. So that's what your future holds, is just continue that trajectory on building, getting, mentoring.
Yeah, I want to continue to unlock those change makers.
Yeah.
You know, I want to find people who say, I want to drive social progress, I'm not quite sure how to do it. And say, what if?
Yeah.
And have fun along the way, you know? Like, when you feel that community coming alive. I get tired of folks who are like, how do you like it being downtown? And it has that tone.
Right.
I'm like, I
It's
love it.
awesome down here.
love it.
It is, yeah.
There's a lot of cool
It's
stuff.
I'm born and raised and the progression from, uptown to here has been huge.
Yeah.
It's good. It's a good place to be.
Welcome to Firestarters.
Well, thank
Do
you.
my account.
Yeah. This is, I just surrounded myself with people
Yeah.
that I needed for support. It's, thank you so much,
Yeah,
I'm so
thank you
glad
for
you
having me.
shared, and there's lots of donuts. Sorry for the people on Zoom, I can't can donuts.
Don't throw donuts at the kid.
Go to
Don't.
Maple Table and get the donuts.
Yeah,
They're very good.
but yes, thank you, thanks for sharing your experiences, it's amazing, good takeaways from here.
Yay! We'll close tonight.